Thanks very much indeed for joining us today. There may be a few people watching who don't know about TechNation. I can't imagine there'd be too many because obviously you're extraordinarily well known within the startup community in the United Kingdom. But maybe just give us an overview of TechNation's remit and also maybe tell us what role it's performing in this really weird tech market that we've just come through. In other words, the last year of lockdown, which has caused a huge amount of confusion and probably angst amongst entrepreneurs working in technology.
Great. So TechNation is what we call a government-supported organisation, in that we're an independent company, but about 80% of our funding comes from the UK government. And our mission is to support scaling tech companies right across the United Kingdom. So we're one of the few organisations that it has a national footprint, in that we have a team of people who are in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, the 3 devolved nations, but also in all 8 of the English regions as well. And our job, as I say, is to find and help these scaling tech companies. So we're working on the same kind of guidance as other institutions like the Scale Up Institute in the UK, where we're looking for companies that have got through that first bit of the valley of death as startups. They've got a product, it's had some traction in some kind of market, they've probably raised their first bit of money, and they probably have their first staff on board. So that's the kind of where we start, and we go actually all the way up to the unicorns. So would they typically, the companies typically have raised a little bit of money, or would they have kind of got to where they are with their employment count, their relatively small employment count, based on funding things themselves or bootstrapping it, or would they have got some seed funding? Yeah, it's a real mix. I mean, I'm not going to put percentages on it, but the majority have raised some kind of investment capital, whether it's from angels or whether it's from the very small kind of funds. But some have bootstrapped and used proceeds even from previous ventures that have perhaps done reasonably well. But we've also got companies that have earned revenue from day one and actually have lots of revenue already into the millions in some cases. So it's a real mix, and I think it's a good reflection of what the UK ecosystem is.
And just before you continue there, but you mentioned UK, but I presume you also work with, or have in the past worked with, quite a few companies that are headquartered overseas, but are essentially startup organizations as far as the UK is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, our job, as we're paid for, and my salary is paid for by the UK taxpayer, is to help companies and create jobs in the United Kingdom. So if an overseas organization wants to set up a subsidiary in the UK that's going to create fantastic jobs for people in the UK, then yes, absolutely, we support those companies. But you know, our focus is on those kind of homegrown companies as well. Interestingly, a very large number of our companies have founders that have come from overseas. So there's been in the last kind of 5 or 6 years, there's been a huge influx of founders who've seen the kind of growing UK tech ecosystem and gone, that's my place to build my business. And it helps that we're right in the middle of the time zones and we speak, the world language. We're very, lucky to be able to do that.
Okay, so the second part of my question was in terms of the innovation in a weird market. Do you believe that innovation is still has been happening, not just innovation that relates to the crisis that we're in, but more widely in terms of innovation that will create wealth and create new market opportunities?
It's been a strange time for us all. We were an organization with kind of 90 staff when we came into the pandemic. We had offices in Manchester and in London. I'm based in Bristol and spent 2 or 3 days a week in London. In the last year, I've been to London twice for a day, and that's it. We've actually now released our offices because our leases just happened to come up. So we're now, as an organization, we're now over 100 people. So we've hired during the pandemic, but we no longer have offices. So we're looking to the future and working out how that's going to be. And that is a similar story for lots of the companies we support. So we have an alumni group of about 800 companies that have been through one of our programs that we're in touch with, as well as a wider ecosystem of about 3,000 scaling tech companies in the UK. And the effects of the pandemic have been very, very mixed. For some, it's been an existential crisis. They were perhaps exposed to a market segment like hospitality that just vanished in front of them, or business travel. Some have managed to, batten down, put themselves into kind of, in the freezer and are waiting for things to get better. Others have gone into receivership and haven't survived. But the majority of companies we've been working with actually have seen either the same business potential, because they were B2B companies and business has carried on, or they've actually seen new opportunities. Funding is a record year. So 2020 is a record year for funding in the UK. Now that goes against all the narrative that you hear from other business sectors. And we certainly believe that tech has been the most resilient sector of the entire economy.
Yeah.
And that's shown by jobs. There are more vacancies in tech than there were last year. So again, against the trend of other sectors shedding jobs. But it's certainly true to say that for some individual companies, that hasn't been their picture. So we're always respectful for those. Lots of them have pivoted. And to talk about innovation, they've pivoted and realized that their business model wasn't working in one sector, and now there are other sectors. So there are companies that I know that were doing restaurant meals and encouraging people to go to restaurants. They very quickly pivoted to home delivery of restaurant meals. And platforms have then gone one step further and said, well, actually, if we can deliver food, why don't we deliver the raw materials for people making their own food at home as they're cooking more? So innovation, any crisis is a great opportunity for innovation in general. But that's tactical. Those things will go back to normal. There will be less restaurant deliveries, I'm sure. There will be less of those kind of home pantry deliveries in the future as well, as we all want to probably go out and start spending money in shops and the social aspect of all that. But overall, we would say that innovation hasn't had a dip during this time, but has actually increased, and not just as an effect of the pandemic.
Well, just focusing a bit on that innovation, if we could focus perhaps on what I might describe as the new normal after we're told we're going to be getting out of this lockdown in the next 3 months or so, but certainly we will get out of it. Hopefully, it may not be what normal was before, but hopefully it'll be close to it. But obviously, there's going to be new markets created, and we're going to be depending on UK-based companies, indigenous or otherwise, to create products and solutions for those new markets in the future. Can you give us a sense of what kind of companies you're seeing that are potentially going to be tapping into those markets? Is it blockchain-based architectures? Is it decentralized solutions? Is it largely B2B, or are we talking mostly about sort of small incremental changes to existing, say, e-commerce offers?
Not probably the right answer, but it's all of the above. So we're lucky in that we see pretty much a cross-section of everything that's going on. And we work in some sectors where we focus on behalf of the government on parts that fit within a wider industrial strategy. So we have a program, and we've had a program for a number of years, that focuses on fintech. And fintech is the strongest sector of the UK tech economy, raises almost a third of all the money for companies that in the UK. And fintech has moved from the kind of B2C side of fintech, where there have been challenger banks, to some real B2B back end stuff. And now it's getting right into the knitting of the whole kind of financial sector. So distributed ledger technology, I think, blockchain is now seen as a slightly dirty word as it's associated with crypto. But distributed ledger is definitely going mainstream this year. We can see that in some of the companies and the valuations that those companies are attracting. If you then look at cyber, Cyber's been a very established sector in the UK for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, with everything that's been going on in the world, particularly in the States, it's even higher profile for both companies, individuals, and now governments. So the cyber sector is really growing, and the UK has a real strength in that. And then the third sector that we've been focusing on for a couple of years is AI. And of course, AI is potentially changing everything. The actual fruits of that are still hard to find, but you see companies working on all kinds of technologies that will be genuinely transformative. But AI takes a bit more money and a bit more time to become mainstream than some other sectors. But the one that we've just started working with, and which I personally believe has the biggest potential of all the sectors, is net zero, or climate tech as it's sometimes called. To achieve the goals that world governments are setting of getting to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, basically will create the largest market in the world.
Do you think, though, it's where we're looking at a vast, hype cycle associated with net zero? Obviously the Gates Foundation and big tech is all for it, but there is a genuine debate to be had as to whether this is where the focus of innovation should be, and whether net zero is going to defocus on things that actually could make substantial improvement to service provision and product delivery and so on. Are we potentially in danger of creating an almighty great big red herring?
For my view, no. And yes, I've got the book. And Bill Gates, for me, is a personal hero. He is the greatest tech entrepreneur of our generation, or of any generation, actually. And I believe in, reading the book, he's coming at it with cold eyes. He's coming not with the warm and fluffy, let's save the planet. He's saying this is the biggest market opportunity there will ever be. If governments, companies, and individuals are going to achieve these climate goals, and if we don't, we're all in trouble, there will be an outpouring of spending which is greater than any outpouring of spending that has ever happened in the history of the planet. So to do that creates the largest market in the world. And for any entrepreneur, when you're looking at your total addressable market, if you can say it is the largest market in the world, then you've got the attention of the investment community. But at the moment, people aren't quite grasping that opportunity, and they don't see how they can take a small company that might be in Scotland or in Bristol, where I am, and say, well, how can that company take advantage of this huge market? And the key thing is going to be the internationalization of net zero companies. No one country can move the needle on net zero, and no one company working in one country can therefore take advantage of the opportunity. So this will be a fantastic opportunity for a company to take a world market lead. And that will start with the kind of more developed nations who are the first to focus on this, and the UK is pretty much in the lead in this. But it will also be lots of developing nations who will decide to leapfrog existing technology and go straight to the new technologies that will become available. And that's a huge opportunity. So yeah, we're going long on net zero at TechNation. We believe that is going to be the future.
I must admit, I am a net zero skeptic. I think most people would not be surprised at that. But there is a genuine concern about the Build Back Better narrative. That it doesn't really hold out much hope for people who perhaps have a different worldview, and genuinely might actually create new paradigms. We have seen, for example, Silicon Valley has really taken its eye off the ball in terms of developing new technologies, particularly manufacturing technologies, and in the creation of factory automation systems, which would result in huge productivity improvements, but not necessarily result in Industry 4.0 or whatever. You know, they would be incremental changes and incremental improvements to existing production processes. Also, the other counter view is that it's very easy for Microsoft and software companies to say that they're going to achieve net zero, but meanwhile, we do have to have steel plants and manufacturing plants which can never achieve that. You know, so is there a huge amount of hype, similar type of hype that we had around artificial intelligence?
I think what there is a lot of greenwashing, to use the phrase, where companies are saying, you know, we have cancelled our kind of carbon emission for the whole lifetime of our company. What does that actually mean? It means they've bought some trees. That isn't what we're talking about. What we're talking about is changing every aspect of society, every aspect of transportation, every aspect of building technology, every aspect of transportation technology. All those things have to change to become at least zero emitters, and in some cases net zero emitters. So that's a massive job. And if you look at the valuations of the tech companies, the car companies that have embraced that, they're rocketing, and the ones that haven't yet embraced it are plummeting. And that's a sign of the market saying, we can see that you need to move quicker and faster.
Yeah.
And you know, whether the valuations are bubble valuations at the moment, that's where the long-term value will be. And the infrastructure costs, I mean, just to be able to transform all the petrol stations in the UK to become charging stations. Imagine winning a contract to do that as a contractor or a company, or applying your technology to that. That's a huge, huge market, which will happen once in a generation. Yeah. These things haven't happened for a long time. You know, the switch from coal to gas was the last time this happened, and that generated a lot of money for the UK economy.
Yeah, although it was interesting, I read during the week that, of course, Tesla had made it more than $1 billion just in terms of Bitcoin gains, which helped its revenue statements. But Bitcoin has gone down, of course, over the last few days. Just my final question is the tech market, as it's currently constituted, is heavily dependent on a number of big tech incumbents. You know, many UK tech firms are simply systems integrators integrating Microsoft or SAP or Google technologies. So the big tech, as it's currently constituted, the business model was, you know, essentially ad driven. If you take Google, it was extraordinarily innovative, you know, and created some wonderful products. But the ad revenue model was what created big tech. And of course, it's now getting itself into awful trouble because it would appear to be suppressing freedom of speech if it doesn't fit its narrative. Do you think the ad revenue model is one that's going to sustain technology, the largest technology businesses in this new normal, or do we need to create some type of new paradigm, which is much more back to the roots of business, namely people paying for stuff that provides value?
I think it's clear that you know there's a change coming. You can see it, you can feel it in how people are responding to, you know, the Facebook and Google and all the other social media companies are now no longer seen as the good guys for offering a service for free. People are now suspicious. That will take time to work through. It's not going to happen overnight, and new companies will spring up. I always remember going back to the birth of Microsoft again. Microsoft was seen as a tiny company. IBM, you know, could crush it at any moment. Lotus was actually the largest software company in the world. Within 2 years, not a decade, not even half a decade, but within 2 years, Lotus had gone, bought amusing.
Yeah, they were a former client of mine. Yeah, absolutely.
And Microsoft was the richest company in the world with the richest entrepreneur in the world at the head of them. And that happened just in a blink of an eye. So I think if you are Google or Facebook or any of these giant companies, you're always looking over your shoulder. You're always looking for what's coming next and can take your place. And again, you know, the whole history of tech and in general of industrialization has been rapid spurts of change where the old order is completely usurped and companies that were totally dominant just vanish in front of you. And you look back and say, how did that happen? And we feel like we're just entering into that period.
There are many people who say that the United Kingdom is in an extremely lucrative position in terms of usurping, the position of the Silicon Valley giants, the Bay Area giants, and particularly as a result of the development of fintech. And so many of the fastest growing companies, you only have to look at some of the new players in the banking block, such as Revolut and Monzo and so on, who have done an extraordinary job in our UK headquartered companies and have kind of defined the kind of alternative internet-based banking model. Do you think we might just see, and maybe if you and I had a chat in 10 years' time, some of those UK companies being now the global giants of tech?
I think that this is a challenge, and this is something that we, on behalf of the UK government, kind of are challenged by, in that the UK home market is very small. We are a small island nation with 66 million people. So a company can do really well in the UK and be a household name like Monzo is. And I've got a full gamut of Monzo cards. But if they don't break the international markets, if they don't break the massively increasing and important Asia Pacific markets, and if they don't break the always important US market, they will forever just be a British company. And that is the challenge, that to do that properly requires real funding. So a great example is a company that was unknown when this whole pandemic started, which is Hopin in the UK. UK founded company, started and incorporated in 2019, had raised a small amount of money, a small number of millions, and was just in the right place at the right time, because what do? They offer online events to replace face-to-face events. And that was quite a minority thing that in February of 2020. They raised and have all raised immediately a Series A of $40 million and then a Series B of $115 million. And the rumors on the press in the last couple of days are they're about to close a 400 million Series C round. Where's all that money come from? It's all come from the Valley, and not any investors, but the very, very top tier investors of the Valley. And that company, its expansion and its growth will not be in the small market of the UK. We were an early adopter. We've just used this very morning, Hopin, for an event of ours that lots of people are doing. It will be in the markets of Asia Pacific and in the markets of the US. So Hopin will be seen as a world company. Will it always be remembered as a British company when it's actually headquartered in the States or headquartered in Asia Pacific? Who knows? But it will be a success story.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been fascinating, and I wish you every success in supporting these wonderful entrepreneurial UK companies. And thanks very much indeed for taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a great discussion.